Well, hello everybody. There we go. We're in. So, here I am, Dr. Russo, the vested professor. So this week I really want to talk about what is the episode 4 of our Stoic philosophy, and I put some notes together. The quote is from Epictetus, and he goes on to say, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. There's really nothing truer than that. Everything that we think happens to us that makes us upset, makes us sad, makes us mad, really, you can't say, like, you made me mad or this made me mad. It really is on how you're reacting to it. So when we start talking about how we react to things, I got to look at it from the aspect of it's crucial for our developing our own resilience. That if we stop looking at ourselves really as the victim or a victim, that victimhood is really, if you think about it, it really has taken over a lot of our daily lives. Our society has really changed. So every day we are faced with challenges, and it's how we are going to react to those challenges. And I'm not saying that you always have to be this happy-go-lucky type individual, but you do have this sense of control. And once you take back this control, you are then looking at your resilience, if you will. The more resilient you are, the happier your life is going to be. You ever had those friends or family that always just seems to bring down the mood, always seems to bring down or bring in negative energy? And it's because they're reacting to some outside force that either, they woke up on the wrong side of the bed, they had a bad day. And I mean, that happens to all of us. But they can't and they shouldn't let that define the rest of their day. So they're in a bad mood. Well, we always say, well, get yourself out of a bad mood. My dad used to always say, crabbiness spreads like a cancer. That you may wake up crabby, or, we always kind of blame it on, well, I need coffee first. Okay, so you're blaming it on yourself that you need some stimulant, right, to make yourself feel better. Okay, fine. But if someone reacts to your bad mood, well, then we often kind of play that role of victim as well, as like, well, why are you so mad? Well, no, they're just normally they're just feeding off of your energy. So when I look at teens, because having worked with teenagers in my past, and of course raised teenagers, they have to learn that the power really relies in their responses. And if we can teach them that, hey, your response to my, hey, go clean up your bedroom, or no, you can't go to your friend's house, or no, you can't go to the mall, or no, you can't buy this or that. We can teach them to respond in a positive manner. We can teach both of ourselves as parents and our teenagers or others that we need to guardianship of, well, let's compromise. So the reason I'm saying no, and you don't have to, they should never expect a response or an answer, right, or a reason why. They normally will say, well, but why? Okay. It's not that you have to explain yourself, because you could just be pissed off too, right? You can just have that lack of resilience, and just because I said so. Do you really want to say that, or be true to your feelings as well as to them? And I think the positivity goes a long way of, well, right now I have a lot going on. Can I take you later? Or can somebody else pick you up and drop you off? Because it's just not in my schedule to be able to do that today because I have things to focus on. Again, this is just off the cuff. But I do want you to be thinking about this stuff as you go through, especially with teenagers or people who are just difficult. And they want that proactive attitude. And that is part of being proactive. Sorry about the wind. I know it's going to affect the sound, but and of course my voice is already going and I just started the video. But you want to be able to take what we look at as obstacles and you want to turn them into opportunities. That, okay, so you're in a bad mood. What's it going to take for you to turn yourself around? Is it just go, you know what? Go back to the room. Let's start over. Let's rethink things. It's stuff like that if you are able to offer some new opportunity, not just a shutdown and such, I think that logic and that reasoning can go a long way. Now, the wisdom in Epictetus is that, especially for this quote, and the moral that he was really trying to emphasize are some more emotional intelligence and that resilience. Of course, it's crucial in our navigating life's ups and downs, positives and negatives. So there's this teaching, really, if you think about it, is several reasons that I think that people can really learn from all of this. So again, I've got my notes because today I wrote up a lot of stuff that I wanted to say. So the first is cultivating resilience. A lot of people are well, what is resilience? Why should it matter to me? So on and so forth. Can we do better? Really, resilience is the ability to overcome or recover from difficulties. And the more resilient you are, again, the less victimhood you feel, the ability to get back into a happy mood and move on. A lot of times we say, well, I just can't get this out of my head. You got to learn to let it go. That's part of the resilience. I'm not a psychologist. I'm a philosopher. So all too often, we think that things that happen to us, we give more power to, and that we give it more of the ability to affect a change over us. Why? Why do we frickin' do that? Again, only unless you really want to play this victimhood. I gotta say that it is how we react. I mean, there are things that piss me off every day. Whether it's in my personal life, it's in my relationships, or it's in news, or even if my computer ends up having a screw up. Well, then what do I say? What? The computer's not doing it on purpose. We feel like it. We're like, oh my gosh, But when faced with that, I really always have to think about, okay, it's not doing it to me. Yes, there are people that try to push our buttons, right? A lot of people try to push our buttons. But it's on how we can shift our focus from something that's external to more internal controls. And it is part of your foundational skill sets that you have to learn and work at it in building your resilience. It allows you to bounce back from bad experiences. We can't calculate when we're going to have a car breakdown or a flat tire. It pisses us off because maybe we're already late. Maybe we had other things going on and you're like, great, this is all I freaking needed. Well, guess what? Sometimes, okay, thanks. So, when we really look at empowering our personal agency, that is recognizing our own reaction. That when we're faced with certain things, we end up reacting in certain ways. And this can kind of be self-controlling in a bad way. Why should we let bad feelings affect the rest of our day? I try not to. I know shit doesn't go my way. Nothing goes our way, right? But why should we allow that to dictate my mood and the rest of the day? So I'm going to bring it back to teenagers, and then we can kind of work ourselves back up to adults. So when we're looking at teenagers, they often feel their life is dictated by parents, authority figures like teachers, and societal expectations. They may look at their use of TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat. Talking with friends may be like their only outlet. And if you take that away from them, then you're taking away the control that they have. Well, I'm not saying control is a bad thing, and I'm not saying that it's one that you should always use as leverage to strong arm. But again, having, teenagers are not yet adults. They don't have that emotional intelligence. The expectation is you as an adult have that emotional intelligence. And that's where I'm here to tell you, a lot of adults, you lack emotional intelligence. You let your teenagers piss you off. You let coworkers piss you off. You let spouses or significant others you feel like they get under your skin and they push your buttons. That's really not their problem. That's your problem. It really is, because you can say, you know what, I'm going to let it go. You can choose to walk away from a situation. Like you and a significant other might be all up in arms and ticked off at each other, and you need to debate and discuss. But you know what? One of you could be the bigger person with emotional intelligence and say, I hear you. And I think that we can talk this through. Again, it's about emotional intelligence and understanding how you can approach things. And your personal agency, you're empowering yourself to say, you know what? I know I'm upset, you're upset, and I'm not discounting that. Can we just cool off? Can we walk away for 5 minutes, 10 minutes? I'm not saying we're not going to talk about this. But then also we need to have, and it's always important, to have a physical divide between you. That's why sitting at a table is something that you should always think about doing. Because when there's nothing in between you, then it feels like there's no obstacle. Some people get to feeling like they can get up in somebody else's grill and be pissed off. So that's why I do say, don't get up in each other's grill. Don't be pissed off. Don't really look at each other as, well, because that's where things can start to get physical, right? You don't want anything to ever get physical. So when you look at all of this, I want you to be looking at understanding that you have that control. You are the one that's in control of your own emotions, your own physical, your own verbal attitudes, your mental shift. And this is where I encourage the positive outlook. And I'm not saying everybody always has to be like this bright cherry sunshine. We can't expect that, not in human condition, right? Bad days happen. So I want you to be able to kind of look at, okay, well, I know that the quote is, it's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters. Epictetus really is promoting this personal accountability and saying, just have a positive attitude towards what's going on in your life. And really, by focusing on how you can react constructively, that's part of that, hey, I know that I need to approach this stuff differently. We are more likely to see and seize opportunities for growth in ourselves, as well as learning. And I think that, again, I love talking about critical thinking, and that is a growth. It's something that, what have you learned in tackling a problem that you would normally say, I'm a victim? Can you actually change that around, turn it around? Don't look at everything as an adverse criticism or even an adverse circumstance. Not everything always has to be against you, right? So this outlook really does have transformative powers over yourself, right? Over what you can do to make yourself happier. It is a lot of interpersonal skills, your relationship building with people, and how you get better. You're more empathetic. And I always say, I deal with a lot of doctoral students, graduate students who are adults, who seem to be, we're set in our ways. We really want to not take criticism well. And I think if you can take criticism a lot better than you normally would, and give empathy, even say, professors, we have bad days. People have bad days. And there's times that I can be overcritical. I don't need the attitude back. There's a way to constructively call somebody out on that, which is have the empathy, saying, I'm not sure. You can always kind of just say, hey, thank you for the feedback. I'm going to take it for what it is, and I'm going to use it and let it go. But if you feel like you really have to be the one to say something to somebody, do it in an empathetic manner. What I love about AI now is you can really, like whether you're using Copilot to revise or respond to emails, you can say, respond to this in an empathetic manner, yet getting the point across that I'm not happy with the feedback I was given, or on the response that I was given, but be empathetic. There's a lot of times it'll teach us to use words that are a hell of a lot better. So, one of the other things is teaching problem-solving skills, something that we lack as human beings. We usually now, I see a lot of teenagers and a lot of adults, and I'm saying adults in their 20s, 30s, and even 40s and above, so I can say all age groups, right? But it depends on the varying manner in which the person wants to have problems solved. We might not be able to solve all the problems on our own. We might need some help. And it's okay to ask for that help, because we don't always have that same the perspective that somebody else may have. And so that's where I really look at, it is a skill. Problem solving is not traits. It's not something we're born with. We're faced with new situations. We can be faced with situations that seem to be something like we faced before, but they're all going to be unique. So what do? You have to face them by looking at it from a different perspective. And that's where, when you feel like, hey, I'm not going to ask somebody else for help, you're failing at that. And I would look at that as a failure. Because if we start to look at critical skills like problem solving, that's why group work is good. That's why, yes, I kind of look at shopping around for an answer is wrong. but shopping around for, hey, I have a problem. How would you face this? How would you respond to this? That's asking for problem-solving skills. But again, the quote, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it, really is an analytical approach to the challenges that we're going to face each and every day. And you have to consider various responses, various perspectives as well. But what about the long-term mental health issues? Too many people have too many mental health issues. A lot of it is imagined. Some of it is, our diet, our routines. You develop a habit of responding positively, even in your mind, to any kind of life's challenges. It really helps as a buffer for any mental health struggles. I struggle with PTSD from military service. I'm talking about like 4 different campaigns over a 30-year career, multiple tours. I did a lot of counterterrorism for years. So I always saw the worst places in the world, humanity at its worst. And so, I know a lot of people suffer from anxiety and depression. But if we constantly choose constructive responses rather than some kind of adverse response, you really start to maintain a healthier mental or emotional state. And that's something that you really have to look at, that, hey, I can approach things with ups and downs and do it in a positive manner. The quote itself really does serve as a reminder of the power we really do hold over our own experiences, our own responses. Now, teenagers, they internalize everything. Anything that's particularly transformative for them. They really have a hard time with the lack of resilience skills, the lack of emotional intelligence development, and of course we know that they have very little problem-solving skills. Their world is kind of confined to everything at school and at home. Those are the 2 social outlets in which they are going to learn how to be more resilient. Well, teachers, authority figures, parents, you literally, though, do have the majority of your child's ear, or those teenagers' ears. And so you can really say, hey, here's more information to help you. They're going to inevitably have challenges, and you being able to open communication with them really is going to help. Even the ones that may say that they're harder to talk with or talk to. So in ending, really what we're looking at is the explanation of this quote is that it's crucial for developing resilience, especially in modern day. You think this quote was written 1,000 years ago. Life is inevitably going to have challenges. Doesn't matter whether it was written in 600 AD. But the control we have over our own reactions really is going to define our experiences. Now, I'm going to leave you with this before I sign off. Some reflective questions, and I want you to be thinking about this. Some real reflective questions. How do you typically react to some difficult situations? And when I say how do you typically react, do you freeze up? I look at it as paralysis. Right? Analytical paralysis. You're just taken so aback by something that's happened to you, you don't know how to react. That is part of resilience, just not knowing how to react. Or you react very poorly. You act, when I say poorly, you are way up to upset. You're emotional. You're crying. When should you? Is this something that should be that upsetting? Or is it something that you may not react at all? Some people don't react at all. So that's one way to look at it as well. Out of the this is number 2 is, can you recall a time when you responded positively to a challenge? This last week has been heck for me. I'm getting over a chest cold, COVID. I still, I want to write. I took like 5 days off and I hadn't written anything, so on and so forth. So I had to look at how did I take time? And I did. I took time for myself. The third question to reflect on are, what strategies can you use to manage your reaction better? Quiet contemplation. How can you react differently? When can you react differently? So with that, I'm going to end that here. Look for me when I come on live. I'm going to try every so many days with this. I've got like over 100 different quotes to be able to contemplate. So your doctor, the vested professor, signing off. Thanks, everybody.